presentation that Rev Grace put together for us tonight. You guys know that I'm kind of a brat sometimes, and I wanted that song, and I was like, there's gotta be a way you and Maxie can do it. There's gotta be a way. And so after lots of talk last night, Rev decided to humor me, and she was like, okay, we'll do this slideshow thing. And I was like, oh, beautiful. And so last night she's working on it to get it ready for me, because we all know, like I said, I'm a little bit of a brat and I really wanted this. And there was a reason I wanted this, because I was thinking about summertime. And I had this memory that goes back to when I was a little girl. I was probably about 8 years old. And in my hometown, it would be very, very hot during the summer. And we had this river that ran through our town. It was called the Willimantic River, because I grew up in Willimantic, Connecticut. And they had this park there, and it was called Lauder Park. And the river was pretty wide, and it was really, really deep. My mother decided when I was 8 that I needed to take swim lessons. Now, I want to tell you, I wasn't too keen on this whole idea. I had seen things in this river. Even when I was only standing up to my knees, there were fish and there were little creatures. I didn't know what the heck they were. But I wasn't too keen on it. You know, you couldn't really see. The water was murky and it had silt in the bottom. And if you ever grew up near any place that has a silty sand bottom, when you put your feet down, it feels really gross and slimy, but all this silt comes up and you can't see anything. Well, I got through the swimming lessons, but the very last day, we had to climb up this really high diving board and we had to jump into the water. Now, this diving board was probably, you know, it was on this big rock tower and you had to climb up and all the way out to the diving board. It was probably like 10 feet above the water. I was scared to death. And of course, last name Walker, I was near the end, right? So everybody else is jumping up, they're running off, boom, they're in the water. And I'm standing there and I'm going, first off, I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm wicked afraid of heights. I can barely stand on a chair to change a light bulb. So it was really, really high. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be different than everybody. I don't fit into this. I'm all alone. I can't do this. And I stood there and I stood there. And so I finally got up and I climbed up the big rock thing and I got to the diving board and I thought about not doing it. I really did. But you know, one of the things that I know about myself is when somebody tells me I can't do something, I'm gonna find a way. And the only way I knew, because I was 8 years old and had just gone through first grade, was to pray. Because I went to Catholic school and they gave me a really great background. And they told me if I claimed Jesus was with me, I was okay, that God would never leave me. And so I ran off this diving board. It was scary as heck. It felt like 3 minutes of falling. I know it was only a few seconds, but it felt like 3 minutes of falling. And I realized I was not in the shallows, because when I hit the water, I'd never been out that far before. I couldn't feel the bottom. I couldn't feel the silt. I was waiting for the silt. I was praying for the silt, but I couldn't feel the silt because I was in way, way over my head. And again, I started to get that panic and I started to get that everybody else did this. And here I am, I'm going to drown at 8 years old in this Lauder Park River. But again, God held me up. I don't know why. I don't know how it happened, but I started to move my arms and move my legs and I made it back in. I want to tell you, I probably didn't go off that diving board again until I was much, much older. I didn't do it again that summer, I'll tell you that much. But isn't that kind of where we are now? We are far from the shallows now. We are in the middle of this COVID-19. We get to the place where, you know, everything shut down and then things started to open and it was like, oh, here we go. Just like me jumping off the diving board. And then I realized I can't touch. And now we're back. We're back in our homes. It doesn't look like it's going to be anytime soon that we are going to be getting together in person. You know, it's a sense of isolation. It's a sense of being all alone. I had that experience again this week. My biological son is back in Tallahassee and Gavin is up in Tampa and he is starting his cancer treatment. He won't be home for 3 weeks. And I'm a type of person that I like to be around other people. So for me at first, it was a little eerie. It was a little weird. The house was really quiet. I talked a lot to the animals. I think I drove them a little crazy. And then I decided, you know what? I dedicated myself to God. Let me talk to God. And I talk to God regularly, but boy, have I been talking God's ear off. I bet God wishes I would be quiet sometimes. I think he probably needs a little rest and a little peace from my going on and on and on. But this loss feeling, this sense of isolation, you know, there is an Austrian psychoanalyst named Otto Rank, and Otto Rank talks about the original wound. And the original wound is our initial separation from our mother at birth. For 9 months, we have been in this protected water environment that's safe and that's protected, and we feel warm and all our needs are taken care of. And then at 9 months, we're born and we're out into this crazy bright place. We're out in this noise and we're scared. We're scared. And it creates a trauma. It creates the original separation trauma. And Otto Rank says that whenever we are feeling alone, when we are feeling disconnected, when we are feeling that we are not with someone else, we're not connected, it is a reopening of that original wound. It's a reopening of that trauma. And so we know that when people have had trauma and then we're brought back to it, we have certain things that we do that are not always the best things. So one of the things that Otto Rank was talking about, and one of the things that he said, is we can heal this original trauma, this wound, and we heal it through love. That having that sincere devotion to somebody else. He says it comes through art, our self-expression, our art, our creativity, and it comes through connection. And he said, when you combine these things, it's a recreation, a reunion, if you will, of ourself with the divine self, with that total connection of being totally taken care of. And he goes on to say that when the cosmos and the psyche are combined, we are healed again. And so I started to think about Unio Mystico, and I started to think about Brother Lawrence, and I started to think about how Brother Lawrence did everything with God. And in the past week, I have been doing everything with God because, like I said, I don't stop talking to God. So when I'm peeling the potatoes, I'm like, hey, God, are these potatoes peeled well enough? What do you think? Should we cut some carrots up too? And I'm talking out loud. So if you were in my house, you'd think I was really crazy and eccentric, which I probably am. I took the time to read the book because I had never read the book before on practicing the presence of God. And I didn't know how long it was going to be, but I started to read it and it was absolutely amazing. It's not really long. It only takes about an hour and 15 minutes to read. And I love the style because at first it's 4 conversations that he's having with someone else, and then it becomes his letters. And these letters that he writes are letters to nuns who they believe were probably his family members. And in there, he talks about being in love with the divine. And, you know, I really am. And I think many of us are really in love with the divine. And when you're in love with somebody, what is it that you want? Well, you know, you want to do things for them, right? You want to do everything for them. You think about that initial romance. That's karma yogi. That's karma yoga. It's doing something for that person. And so we do it with the love. I mean, we do the service for the love of God, and that brings in the bhakti. You know, when we love somebody, we want to be with them all the time. The other thing that happens when we fall in love with somebody is we want to know about them. And so how do we learn about them? Well, we talk to them, right? And we can talk to the divine, but we can also read Holy Scripture from any denomination, from any faith practice. We can read the Holy Scripture and get to know more about the divine. And then, of course, we want to be on the same page with our loved one, right? We want to be of like mind with them. So how do we do that? Well, we go to Raja Yoga, we go to meditation. And it is in this mindfulness and in practicing mindfulness that Brother Lawrence focused on. He focused on that it's not easy in the beginning. you know, that we want to dedicate ourselves to God, but we often find ourselves taken off. You know, the mind wanders into this Maya. And he said, we have to keep calling ourselves back. We have to keep calling ourselves back. So in the beginning, it's practice. In the beginning, it's being consciously aware of where are our thoughts, and do those thoughts go along with God's thoughts? And if they don't, we call ourselves back. He also talked about, Brother Lawrence also talked about sharing everything from a place of humility and vulnerability, and going to God and confessing. So Brother Lawrence did a whole lot of confessing to God, you know, and we tend to do that around here too. We talk about our vulnerabilities. We get really real with who we are, because that's the real connection. It's the connection we want with our divine beloved. It's also the connection we want with each of our members of our community. We get raw. We talk about what's really going on, and we're humble about it. I don't think any of us walks around saying, oh, I know everything. I know all of this. You know, we don't know necessarily. And it's okay to say we don't know. And it's okay to be hurt. And it's okay to express our pain. The other thing that Brother Lawrence talked about in the book was not being able to do anything without the divine, that we needed the divine in every single thing that we do. And many parts in the book, he talks about, if left to my own devices, I would be a wretched being, but by the grace of God. And I think we have to remember that by the grace of God, we are what we are. The other thing that Brother Lawrence talked about was accepting suffering. He had a lot of pain in his life. And even in the little blurb that Fran read, he asks for suffering. And at first I was like, ooh, I don't think I'm going to ask God for that. But he goes on to explain that in asking for the suffering, we are asking to be closer to God, because it is in those times of suffering. It's in those times of the brokenheartedness. It's in the times of the separation where we feel alone, where it's just us and God. We talk about that in recovery. There is going to be that day when it's just going to be us and God. And what are we going to do? And hopefully we tune in, as Brother Lawrence did, to that God spark that lives within our hearts. And then he talked about gratitude and being grateful for everything that God gives us. And how can we not be grateful? You know, we opened up talking about the attributes of God, and Rev Grace sang us that beautiful song, Ajay Alay, about God and how he, before birth, no death, indestructible, indescribable, merciful, loving. How could we not be grateful to have a creator that loves us so much that he can be anything that we need him or her to be at any given moment? If I need a mother, I can go to Goddess. I can go to the Goddess and ask the mother to pick me up. If I need a father, I can go to God the Father and ask for that stability that's provided there always. If I need a totem animal, I can ask for that to come to me and to help me. It's still God. It's still the divine spark. In this connection with God, you know, I wanted to look up Unio Mystica because I wanted to know what it said. So, you know, I looked it up in the Oxford references, and it said, it's the union of the mystic's soul with God. The union of the soul with God. How beautiful is that? And that's what psyche means, by the way. Psyche means soul. It said, in many religious traditions, the ultimate aim of man is for his soul to be absorbed in the transcendent. In theistic religions and traditions, in God, and not only in the hereafter, but in this life as well. And in rare moments, it is ecstasy. And that's what Brother Lawrence is talking about through the whole book, is that ecstasy that he has with God. And don't we have that when we're doing something we love, right? When we're doing something we really enjoy, when we're doing something that's our art, you know, whether it's cooking or whether it's singing beautiful songs or whether it's like Sister Chris is a beautiful artist and working in clay and in different mediums. When we're doing those things, how connected do we feel to God? When you look up Unia Mystica, there's also a whole section on Unia Mystica art, the art that is inspired from the one. It's almost like having a visionary experience. We put forth, we produce what we see in our mind's eye, what has inspired us. And that is from God, because inspired means in spirit. I also see art in this creation of this Maya. You know, there's a lot of bad things going on right now. And we all know what they are. I'm not going to go into them, but we all know the difficulties that are going on in the world right now. And yet, when I watch the sunset, it looks like God took watercolor paints and did it just for me in my favorite colors. When I look outside, and I really love color, I'm very visual. When I look outside and I see all different shades of green and beautiful blue skies and clouds that have pinks and yellows, it's like God painted those just for me. It's an art. You know, there was a time in my life, like I said, when I was really afraid of the water. And at one point in my life, I decided to learn to scuba dive. And I really loved scuba diving when I was doing it. It's a great pastime. And I saw the art of God when I scuba dived as well. But I had a really different experience because, see, I went into that experience with training. I went into that experience with having a guide that walked me through it, walked me through how do you scuba dive, somebody that went with me. And you know, we have that here. We have spiritual directors. We have people here to help us get through things when we need that. We have that guide. One of the things that just was beautiful was seeing all of the fish and the different creatures. You know, I didn't like them too much in the river, but the ones in the ocean are beautiful. It was just like Jacques Cousteau when I was a little girl, all the different beautiful colors and different shapes of fishes, and they were real. And it was amazing to see the creativeness of our creator. So I had a lot of joy when I was scuba diving. At this point in my life, I think I'm a little beyond scuba diving. I don't think I could carry the tank, and I don't know if I really want to go through all that anymore. But the joy in my life now is that connection that I have with the divine. It is the connection with my creator. It's recognizing that my creator created me exactly as I am, and I don't have to know what's coming next. All I have to do is have faith and have trust. I need to recognize all of the things that Brother Lawrence said. I need to remember those things. I can do every task with God as my companion, the ones I love and the ones I don't love. And there's a lot of those that I don't really love. I really don't love, you know, vacuuming the floor and stuff like that. But you know what? It has to be done. And so if I can take that creativity of doing the things that I love and mix it with something that I don't really love, that's a good thing. Brother Lawrence talks about, again, doing things for the love of God, not pleasing anyone, just trying to please the one. I am going to continue to talk to my beloved constantly in humility, in gratitude, in vulnerability. It's the one place I can go and know that no matter how awful I feel or what I express, I will always be accepted. I will always be lifted up. I will always be cherished. I am going to recognize that I'm nothing without the God spark. You know, really, when we think about it, and I wish I could talk to Vern right now, but when we think about it, what are these chemicals and these elements that make us up? It's not any different than the stars or the dirt. Something makes us different. Well, that's that spirit. That's that God spark that's in us. That's that God that lives within our chest, in our heart chakras. We are spiritual beings. and we are having this human experience. And when we are in this container, we often forget who we are, but we can remember. It's a choice. I've actually set alarms at times just to remember who I really am. And it helps. It helps me to get through things. We have to recognize that we are chosen by God. We've come here and we've been chosen. You know, I know through Darshan Center, we've been watching this beautiful series, The Chosen, you know, and we are the chosen. We are the God sparks. We are the ones that are here and are able. And so I go back to the theme of water, and that it all matters how we look at it. It all matters with what lens we look at things. Are we looking at it knowing that God is our constant companion, holding us up through it all? If we are, it's not that dark experience where we're far from the shallow, where we need to be afraid, where things are not going our way. If we focus, if we remember who we are and we know that we are chosen, we can do miracles. We can walk on water. We just have to believe with God by our side. And namaste.